So right now we're on page 7. We're going to do more of the same. Whoops. Oh boy. The top of the page starts off with some definitions. So we're still going to be using order of operations, but now we have an extra step. Instead of just evaluating our expression, we have to substitute a number in for a variable. So the definitions are evaluate, which means find the number answer. If the directions say evaluate, you plug the numbers into the calculator or you show your order of operations and then you give a number answer. A variable is a symbol. It can be any symbol in the world, but it's usually a letter. The reason why they're letters is because it's easier to write a letter. So this right here, my smiley face, that could be a variable. It's a symbol, but it takes a lot longer to draw a smiley face than to write an X. So that's why a lot of times in algebra an X is used or a Y is used because it's super fast to write. And then substitute, we're going to switch the number in for the variable. So if I have a problem like this, 3x, what that says is 3 times x. So 3 times whatever that number is. And then if I tell you x equals 2, well, what we have to do is take that 2 and substitute it. So I have 3 times x, so 3 times 2. Now I can't use the x for times because then that gets confusing. So here I wrote a little dot on it. Oh, whoops. Can I undo that? No, I can't. But what I prefer instead of a dot, I prefer parentheses. To me, the dot and the decimal point get a little confusing. Okay? So now let's look at the steps. Look at the problem to determine what it is asking. So just like I had said before, 3x means 3 times x. It's good to kind of get in your head what's going on with the problem. Replace each letter with its number, and then we're going to use PEMDAS to find our answer. So for these, we're going to show our work. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit more. Example number 1. What is the value of the expression when y equals 6? Well, we know we're going to substitute. This tells us right here. Wherever we see a y, we're going to place a 6. But before we do that, I'm going to read this part in my head. 3y minus 1. Well, 3y, this means 3 times y, then you minus a 1. So we have 3 times y, and we know y is 6. And now I'm just going to copy everything else. So what I did was I rewrote this, but I plugged the number in for the y. Now I'm going to do my PEMDAS. Parentheses, exponent, multiply, divide, add, and subtract. Now I have parentheses. They're right here. But in the math world right now, when it says parentheses, you're looking inside the parentheses. Inside the parentheses, I just have a 6. That means I can't do anything with it. So instead of parentheses, I think of this as multiply because it's just one number. So here, even though we have parentheses, we can't do anything to it. We don't have any exponents, so now I'm on the multiply and divide step. So here I'm going to multiply 3 times 6, and then I bring down everything else. Now, at this point, you might go, well, I already know the answer. This is easy. Yes, you could think that it is that. That's fine. But one of the important things we're stressing, especially at the beginning of this class, is to take your time and show every step that you can. It will make the more difficult things not so bad. So now we've got 18 minus 1. That falls under our add and subtract window. So 18 minus 1 is 17. And sure, you might have been able to do that whole thing without writing any work down. But that's not the point of these problems. It's to practice flexing our algebra muscles a little bit. If we don't practice the easy stuff, when we get to the more difficult problems, we're not going to be able to do it. So number 2, what is the value of the expression when x equals 2 and y equals 3? So here, we're going to plug a 2 in for x and a 3 in for y. So now I'm going to read the expression. 4x minus 2y. So what this means is 4 times x minus 2 times y. And then we just plug in our numbers. X is 2 and y is 3. Okay, PEMDAS. PE, multiply, divide, add, and subtract. We have parentheses, but when you look inside each parentheses, there's just a plain old number. That means we're really multiplying there. So our parentheses is done. We don't have exponents to worry about, so we're on multiply and divide. I'm going to do 4 times 2. Now I'm also going to do this at the same time. So I'm going to bring down my minus, and 2 times 3 is 6. Now I'm at my add and subtract step. 8 minus 6 is 2. Take a minute, try problem number 3. Pause the video, and when you're ready, come back and check your work. This looks like almost the same problem, except we're substituting in a different number. What is the value of the expression when x equals 2 and y equals 3? And our expression is 4 times x minus 2 times y. So the 2 goes in for x. This time a negative 3 goes in for y. So I'm going to rewrite this. 4x minus, oops, well that's not helpful. Let me just say, erase this. Whoops, hey, I want to start a webcam. Just when I thought I was going to get out of here without any silly mistakes. So I'm going to do 4 times x, so 4 times 2 minus 2 times y, 2 times negative 3. So just like the previous problem, the parentheses are really just mean multiply. So I'm going to multiply my two numbers. 4 times 2 is 8. Now this is where some people get confused. You can think of this 2 different ways, and they're both correct. So what I'm going to do is bring down my minus sign, and then I'm going to do 2 times negative 3, and that is a negative 6. Well, that's weird. In algebra, we really don't have 2 signs next to each other. So if you have a minus and a minus, or a minus and a negative, that really turns this into a positive. And 8 plus 6 is 14. Now, I'm going to erase a little bit. And really, the problem isn't going to look any different. So at this point, you can put your pencil down and just watch. Okay, here's my problem. You get that little bit for those of us that are a little bit anxious about fully erasing. So I still have 4 times 2. That's 8. But now here, I'm going to look at this. I'm going to assume this minus 2 is a negative 2. It really means the same thing. So a negative 2 times a negative 3 is a positive 6. And then when you add those two numbers, you get 14. That really is one of the hardest things we do in the first few months, is when you have 2 different signs and you're working with negatives and minuses and positives and pluses. It really can get very overwhelming. Make sure you ask us questions if you have them, and we will get through all this together. Catch you on the next lesson.